Hi, this is Josh Kulp. This is the video for Masechet Avodah Zarah, page 22, Daf Kaf Bet for Daf Shevui. And we're beginning the second chapter, finally, of Masechet Avodah Zarah. And there is a very long, couple daf extended sugya here on a subject that I'm going to admit is a little distasteful to be talking about for so long. And so if you've begun learning the daf, which I hope you have, then you know that the issue is bestiality. Whether or not we're concerned that the non-Jew had sex with the animal. And the Gemara goes through all sorts of variations, assumptions of when we should be concerned, when do non-Jews do have sex with their animals, when non-Jews don't. And I want to admit quite freely that some of these statements are extremely distasteful, they're discriminatory, they are not flattering of non-Jews, and they are statements that I would not be comfortable about Jews making in regard to other people today in my own society. So let's get that out there. I want to offer maybe a couple explanations for various ways to view this discussion. One would be, I would call the realistic way of viewing it, which I don't agree with, but that in Roman society, it was normal for human beings, for men particularly, although the issue of women is entertained here as well, but for people to have sex with animals, and therefore the rabbis were just responding to reality. I am not a historian of the Roman period. I do not know about their attitudes towards bestiality. Maybe they were a little bit more accepting of it. There is an argument that can be made that it's not so wrong. I'm not making that argument. It's not in a Jewish perspective. But does it harm the animal? Is it any worse than eating animals? It certainly leaves them alive. And as long as there's no victim there, what's such a big harm? I could see societies having such an attitude. But I'm familiar a little bit with Roman society, and I find that unlikely that bestiality was rampant in Roman society. So the other possibility is that, at least on a principled level, this is a way of showing disdain for the other. And we've seen that before throughout the Masechet, and we can see that throughout human history. We can see it today too, that when you want to define the other and dehumanize the other, whatever other group that might be, one way of doing it is to ascribe to them deviant sexual practices, or at least sexual practices that you, or the defining person, defines as deviant. And that helps create a sort of a dehumanizing effect. I would emphasize, especially when it's talking about sex with animals, they may be in essence saying that they perceive non-Jews to be animals. The advantage to the first perspective is that it allows us to sort of say that these rules are irrelevant in our society. And many Rishonim say that. They say, look, the rabbis were referring to a society in which non-Jews frequently engaged in sex with animals. And we don't recognize that in our society. It is not a problem. It's not something that we see. It doesn't accurately describe most people, or vast majority of people. And therefore, all of these suspicions that they have in the Talmud are no longer relevant to us. And basically, we don't have to really deal with them. So I think that was pretty much the way the Jewish law, the method the Jewish law took in dealing with these laws. And I think that's a positive thing. But I don't think that's probably necessarily accurate, at least for a principled reading of the Talmud. And then when we have this long discussion, well, that's just the nature of the rabbis in the Talmud. They will clinically dissect anything with absolutely, it seems to me, like no emotional attention to the object of the discussion, and just dissect it as if we're talking like a physician might talk about clinical death without getting emotional about it, or a lawyer or a forensic scientist may talk about crimes without really getting emotionally attached to it, which seems to be the nature of the discussion over here. I know that you are looking for spiritual uplifting to a certain degree while learning the Talmud, and thus you may not enjoy these conversations as much, but it does occupy a couple pages in the Talmud. let's remind ourselves, it's about out of 2,700 pages. It is not an obsession of the rabbis. The rabbis tend to get obsessed about all topics, no matter how interesting or banal or relevant. That's just what rabbis do.